I'd say this is probably the most function over flourish episode of Penguin. By that I mean it's a little bit of what I sometimes call the moving the pieces on the chessboard sort of episode. It's taking the steps that are necessary to get us to the next thing that's going to matter more, but this episode itself is not super exceptional. I do think that is the case, but it's still good. Like, moving pieces around the board episodes they can be one of two things. They can either just be slogs, where it's like, yeah, okay, I know you need to do this so you can do the next thing. Yeah, let's go. Or they can just be kind of neutral because they're not trying to be the next big moment. They are just trying to, continue down the checklist, and they're like, it's fine. And this is basically on that end of the scale, but because the performances are still so good, and we do get a couple of, I think, genuinely really good scenes and stuff that I did still really like, that even though I recognize this as, I don't even want to call it the weakest episode of the season, because that feels overly cruel, but I would say the least exceptional. Because, it's still good. If this was an episode of most other shows, I'd say that was a good, solid episode. But because the standard for Penguin has just been higher, I am just kind of like, yeah, no, that was fine. And it is. But I did mention there were a few things that I really, really liked in this. One is Vic. It was going to come down to it eventually, that Vic was going to have to kill somebody. And in a this wasn't necessary, but you chose to do it kind of way. Because, he did smash that car into a guy and probably killed him, but that was a little bit more of a self-defense situation, arguably. I mean, more for Oz's defense than his own, but you get what I mean. That can be easier to process through adrenaline, the specifics of the situation. But here, with what happens with Squid, while you could make an argument, and Vic probably even says this to himself, that he didn't go into that situation wanting or intending to kill Squid, and he tried to avoid doing it. But the reality is, he still knew it was likely. He still brought a gun. He still fired it, technically unprovoked. Yes, he's scared of Squid. Yes, Squid made a vague general threat, but Squid wasn't attacking him. And Vic turned around and shot him in the neck, which I think also was, when you do this level of violence and gore, I can be turned off by it if I feel like that was unnecessary. No, I think this is necessary. Because again, to compare it to when he squished the guy with the car, I'm not sure he even really got a sense of what that guy looked like afterwards. But he watches Squid gasp and sputter and bleed out. And you can see how much that messes him up. What he did and what he saw. What I also really appreciate is afterwards, he goes to Oz. And Oz can just tell something's wrong. And Oz puts together relatively quickly, oh, you killed that guy that you mentioned before. And what I really like, and there's a number of bits about this, about Oz in general, that I want to circle back to, because this is what I'm going to talk about with him has been going on the whole series. I just don't know if I've highlighted it proper. But I like that he tells Vic, go home, clean up, get some sleep. Tonight's going to suck. You're going to feel like garbage in the morning, but I need you. And I like that he seems to have some genuine empathy. It is delivered as if Oz still remembers how hard the first time he killed somebody was. And, he tells him the thing you kind of expect him to tell somebody like Vic. It gets easier, but the way he says it, it sounds so much more like a weak consolation than an actual attempt to reassure him. At least it gets easier. And I like the dynamic between Vic and Oz. I just do. And I think that this was a beat that had to happen, which again kind of feeds into this being a little bit of a moving down the checklist, pieces on the board kind of an episode. But I think they handled it quite well. Now, the thing with Oz that I want to highlight is this episode, I think, has multiple moments, including the one with Vic, that really sort of emphasize the contradictions of Oz, who he is and what he wants. Because he clearly still has this mythologized image in his mind of the gangsters when he was a kid. You know, the guys who controlled the neighborhood and everybody respected. And those guys in that neighborhood, they helped him out, made sure people had food and a roof over their heads and people respected them. It's a very childish view that he has never let go. He's never let go of the thought of, for lack of a better way to put it, the gentleman does right by the neighborhood gangster, which probably was never real, but in his mind used to be. And that's what he wants to be. But that, of course, clashes with what he does and who he is. Because who he is, who he's willing to be, the lengths that he is very prepared to go to and has gone to, rule out the possibility of him ever being respected enough, of ever having that kind of footing under him, having that kind of loyalty under him. Nobody's going to be that loyal to him. Why would they? He is so untrustworthy. But he still wants that dream. He still wants to be that guy that probably isn't even real. And even if it was real, he could probably never be. And that kind of comes up at a few points, whether it be, his early talking to Vic, the decision to just sort of put Bliss out on the street, just to show the kind of control that he has, the confrontation he has with the city councilman or whatever it is, just grabbing on to him with pliers by the nose and be like, get the power back on in Crown Point. And that sort of shows that, like, he knows what he wants to result from him having power and influence. But, if the kinds of people, the kind of gangsters Oz idolized were ever real, they would have gone to that guy and bribed him. You stuck a pair of pliers up his nose and crushed that middle bit. That's what you did, because that's what you know how to do. And it'll get you the same result. Power goes back on. But you're not that guy, Oz. You're never going to be that guy. But he's also never going to stop trying to be that guy. And it also comes up with the whole meeting with the heads of the local gangs, which I also think was handled fairly well. That could have been really, really cheap and cheesy. This whole let's unite against the bigger fish, and they're like all a little bit generic. Like, here's the triads, here's the Irish gang, here's the Hispanic gang. Really? But it felt as real as I think those characters were ever going to have the space to be. And I especially like the note that Oz hit when talking to Donny Boy, the head of the Sullivans, the Irish gang, where he says, like, you're afraid of them and you bend and scrape for their crumbs and they don't even know your name. And you could see, like, props to the actor who played Donny Boy, because he doesn't get a lot to do, but you could see the impact of that line on him. I'm like, ooh, there it is. There it is. And again, sort of coming back to stuff that I've said about the show before, I like that Oz is able to finagle himself into a position where, no, these people don't trust him, but it's still going to be, they believe, their best decision to side with him anyway. That's part of what I really like about this version of Oz. He's not tricking people into trusting him. People know they can't, by and large. Only, I think Sophia's about the only one who maybe was starting to. And that's why she's taking it so personally. But by and large, like, the Maronis didn't trust him. The other higher-ups at the Falcones didn't trust him. These other gang leaders, they don't trust him. But they see what he's offering, and they want it, and or they think they can use him. And the show has just been continuing on in that vein, and I've really enjoyed watching it. The stuff with Oz's mom is, I'd say, probably on the weekend, and I don't want to say it's like poorly handled. I mean, the part of it is, the simple truth is, I am probably a little bit more sensitive to dementia storylines for elder characters than a lot of audiences are. Like, they're often uncomfortable for me just by their nature, even if they are handled well. And I don't think it's handled poorly, but you know, we get to the end, and while I did have a bit of a oh crap moment when Sophia shows up, this is also what was always going to end up happening with his mother that he didn't want anyone else to know was even still alive. Obviously, eventually she's going to be used against him. That was always going to be what happened. And this was the episode more than any other where she has appeared, where it's very clear that's what we're doing. That said, I do still like the performance. And I think especially when she has her more lucid moment and basically tells Oz, you know, I'm starting to lose it. And if my mind goes completely, don't you dare keep me around as a vegetable. Yeah, she delivered that really well. And even in this episode where I'm like, it's kind of mid by Penguin standards, I'm still finding plenty of stuff to praise. Because this show's just really good. Oh, you know what the other thing was? Okay, so they kind of pulled the trigger on the thing I didn't want them to do, which was to have the Sophia psychiatrist become her lover. I'm more okay with it than I thought I was going to be, because they didn't quite do what I was afraid of. What I was afraid of was that he was going to take advantage of their relationship to manipulate himself into her pants. And I'm not going to say it's impossible that that's kind of what happened. I mean, one could argue he has sort of manipulated his way into her good graces overall. Maybe that would be headcanon-y. I don't think the show fully backs that up. But more importantly, in the specific situation that they are clearly in, she is 100% in control. Like, it's very clear they just had a BDSM scene. She was the top. She was the dom. Now, of course, you know, in those scenes, subs actually have a fair amount of control, and not just the use of the safe word. They're complicated dynamics, but it makes it far less likely that he is psychologically manipulating her for his own ends, or at least to an end that would have been the standard generic untrustworthy shrink thing, you know, trying to con her into, you know, giving him money, doing violence on his behalf, or sleeping with him. And I really got the sense from the scene overall that this was her idea. And I even kind of got the sense from him, he probably begged for this. I don't doubt that he wanted it when he was her shrink, which inappropriate, but the specifics of the situation eased off on the read that I was afraid that I was going to have if they went there. They did go there. I still don't love it. I just don't. But as far as if they were going to do this, that's about as well as it was going to be done. Yeah. Okay. So they even did a thing I was afraid they were going to do. And even that, I'm like, it's whatever. That's fine. And that's as bad as this show gets, is me going, yeah, that's fine. And it doesn't hit that low very often. It's real good. Penguin episode 6. Have you seen it? What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. But don't worry too much about all that. This is the forgetting my own sign off. We take a relaxed attitude around here. So just come on back next time you need a break. And now to give thanks to my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Bernabi Lex the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pau Barabajago, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. I don't know, it feels right that it's October the first time you're seeing all three of these at the same time.